as the Christian listeners go about their Easter celebrations, I'd like you to take a second to think about, from within your doctrine, what exactly is it that you're celebrating and commemorating here? Well, set aside the fact that Easter, right down to the very name, is stolen from other religious traditions. Set aside this absurd nonsense of rabbits laying eggs and things that have become this secular, let's have fun with this and pass out chocolate. I'm talking about from the standpoint of your church and your church's doctrine. What are you actually celebrating? In most Christian denominations, to the extent that they celebrate it at all, Easter is a commemoration of the resurrection of Jesus. We have no good reason to think anything like this has ever occurred, that the stories are accurate, and set all of that aside. What you're really doing is saying, I'm a fan of a God who's willing to torment and torture and crucify an individual to serve as a loophole for the rules that he created. It is a blood cult, but more than that, you're not only worshiping and commemorating something that's patently absurd, but also disgusting. You're worshiping a God who created everything and made rules and doesn't seem to find any other way of circumventing these rules. I don't know why you would have to circumvent rules you created. You just changed them.
They're supposed to be perfect.
You know, I created a perfect world, perfect rules, so there can't be an error in the rules. But now if I'm going to make an exception to the rules, I would just change the rules, although that would be an admission that I'm imperfect. So instead, I'm going to create a loophole, which is still an admission that I'm imperfect. And what's the best way for me to create that loophole? I've got it. A blood sacrifice. Because we're really just descendants of a magic cult that believes life is in the blood.
But then again, it's not really a blood sacrifice. Because what did Jesus lose?
Well,
nothing.
Yeah, there wasn't a sacrifice. It's not just absurd. It's immoral. And when you think about that and when you ask about it or when you try to shrug it off as, well, I realize this doesn't make sense to you, but that's because you're not looking at through the eyes guided by the Holy Spirit. Think about what you're actually saying, that to a regular, rational mind, this doesn't make sense, but it only makes sense if you already presuppose the conditions of this religion. And then, once you're all done, and you've come up with whatever rationalization it is that allows you to continue to not only believe this, but to laud it as something valuable. Think about the people who don't do that, and take a second to at least try to see why we not only think that you are demonstrating a severe lack of critical thinking skills, but that your brain has been so polluted by a dogma that you have taken something which by any other standard would be considered immoral and are now holding up as the greatest moral event in history. It is the ultimate sacrifice that wasn't a sacrifice. It was the ultimate demonstration of love, which has absolutely no recognizable corollary to what we think of as love. How duped do you have to be? How poisoned does your brain have to be before you can twist evil into good, non-sacrifice into sacrifice, absurdity into rationality? And if you've rationalized on this, well, God understands it and I don't, then you're admitting that you don't care to think for yourself, that you're believing it on terrible grounds, and that should be all any of you need to chuck this nonsense aside.